Hello YouTube, Alan back with another video, and this week's topic is Sony cancelling their E3 presence. First time in 24 years, or ever since I suppose E3 started, that Sony are not going to attend. And not only that, they're not going to attend one of their own, I don't know, Sony conventions. People are kind of surprised, what does this mean, yada yada yada. Well, really there's two things. One, chances are Sony don't have anything major to announce. So why go through all the cost and expense of setting up these expensive shows when you're just going to be showing more of the same? Presumably they'll be showing off like Last of Us 2 and the stuff that they basically showed at this year's, that one from Kojima, I can't really remember, Death Stranding or whatever it is. And a lot of the other stuff would be third parties, you know, Square Enix and things like that, but they would have their own shows to show off stuff, and they're going to be at E3 anyway. But this was the bigger question is, what does this mean for E3 in general if the leading platform holder chooses to completely bypass the convention? But really this isn't unprecedented, because several years ago now, Nintendo stopped doing their big presentation. They started to do the Nintendo Direct, and they changed the type of experience that they delivered because, well, times move on. This kind of standing up and grandstanding in front of a kind of a theatre full of kind of journalists and so on, it just doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, the whole point was to kind of project your news to as wide a reach as possible, and if you can do that using streaming services such as YouTube, Twitch and whatever else, then you know you're going to get a lot more people there, and you're going to get the information direct, as Nintendo like to call it, instead of going through some third-party provider. Instead of spending all this money and have the risk of something go wrong. How many E3s did you see controls not work, or you know, people flub their lines or whatever? You make a mistake in a video, well, unless you're me, you can edit it, redo it, and you can have essentially exactly what you want to present. And I suspect that we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. Now, I think Nintendo actually, they learned the best way to mix the two of them, or at least a very good way to mix. So yes, you have your direct presentation, but they still have an E3 presence. They have the Treehouse Live, where they will kind of play the games and kind of talk you through and kind of go into a more deep dive into the experience. And that's a good mix, because it means that if you're interested in a particular game, say for example Smash Brothers or Breath of the Wild or anything like this, you can tune in to those particular tree houses and you get a lot of information, a lot of, you know, real hands-on experience beyond what you might get in the trailer. But if you're not interested in that particular game, well, you don't have to tune in. And I suppose they also happen to have the right personnel for the job. So the people who work in the treehouse are very good at kind of presenting the material. Certainly better than, I think, Sony's equivalent, and Microsoft's equivalent for that matter, but that's my own personal preference on it. So the question will be, what are Sony going to do? Are they going to start to, like, okay, they're sitting out this year, maybe they don't have big announcements, but what about the following year? Is this the last time they're going to appear? And what does it mean for the show as a whole? To be honest, I think the writing has been on the wall, and this is just, you know, another, as I say, another kind of nail in the coffin. Maybe Sony might come back the following year, because chances are they might have like the PlayStation 5 to announce and might want a big venue for that. But I suspect that we're starting to see the end of the traditional kind of E3 experience. And in a way, it's a bit like, you know, in the last video I talked about the kind of game guides, physical game guides going away. Well, this is almost like a relic of that era. So, I mean, back in the early 90s and mid-90s, you know, video game industry wanted to set up its own kind of big conference where they could get journalists together and kind of be able to, you know, present this information. And we didn't have the same kind of connected and digital-driven world that we do today. So it made a lot of sense, you know, to have a big convention. Now, spun off from CES, which they have their big convention. But as time has gone on, as it's more of a digital, you know, content, and that's being delivered over, you know, ever-improving internet, the need for this kind of getting everyone into one room just doesn't make as much sense. So I really find it hard to see that in 10 years' time we will see anything like the E3 that we have today even. And even only a few years ago, didn't they do E for All, where they tried to just do a behind closed door thing, and that really wasn't working. And if Sony are stepping out, Nintendo have already kind of half stepped out, and Microsoft have talked about it too. Who's left? You know, EA, Ubisoft. Yeah, I don't know. It's again, it'll depend on what the marketing budget deems as sensible, but I see this as being the start of the end. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't miss it. Like, I just don't see the point anymore. I've gotten so used to Nintendo Directs, and I actually prefer the content in a nice kind of periodic, little update where you can get news and get it all nicely compiled. In fact, funnily enough, I actually think Nintendo's E3 Directs are among their worsts because they tend to belabor points a lot more. Maybe like I'm in this video, but they tend to, like, say for example this year's one. It was a decent enough show for 20 minutes, and then they spent 25 minutes talking about Smash Bros. And that was it. If you were not interested in Smash Bros., and many people aren't necessarily going to be interested in that one particular game, that was a lot of time on one game. They started talking about menus and everything, like, ridiculous detail. That is perfect for a treehouse where you deep dive, but in this kind of quicker pace, I just want the kind of the trailers and the kind of news bulletins and stuff like that. It was way too much information. And if they've been guilty of that in the past as well at the E3 ones, I suppose they typically tend to have one or two big games and like to focus on them, and that's okay. But to a certain degree, when you don't know that from now to the end of the entire direct, you're just talking about Smash Brothers, you have people kind of hanging on, waiting for the next thing, and they go, oh, there's nothing else. If you literally said, and for a final thing, it's going to be Smash Brothers, then people who are interested in Smash Brothers will watch, and then the rest can tune out, and they can make up their own mind. And to be honest, you'd probably end up with a better final opinion. People might say, there wasn't too much, but it was, essentially did not waste your time. And I feel that a lot of previous E3 experiences and content like that is a waste of consumers' time. Even video games, they're guilty of that too, where you end up with fluff content or filler content. It's like they don't value your time in those videos, they perhaps don't. But anyway, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. Is this the end of E3? Or has Sony come back? Who knows? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, until next time.